Welcome to Turning Point Church today as we think about another saying or quote over this summer. You know, Oscar Wilde said, "To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist, that is all." Imagine with me for a moment that your bank makes some new policies regarding your account, and I think you're going to like them. Firstly, every single day you get £86,400 deposited into your account, and it's all yours and you can spend it as you like. Secondly, though, each night the bank will cancel any money that you didn't spend. Nothing carries over to the next day. Now that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, what would you do? I know what I would do. I'd go about each day spending that money as wisely as possible. I'd invest some, and that would keep Ronnie happy. I would share it with my family and friends. I'd give some to organisations like Hands at Work to feed children in Matsinhubi in Mozambique. And I would probably do some serious shopping too. With an opportunity like that in front of me, I'd make the most of each pound, maximising the opportunity every day. Now, I ask you to think about that because, believe it or not, you and I have been given a similar policy, but not with money, with time. Each day we are given 86,400 brand new seconds to spend, but none of that time carries over to the next day. It has to be lived in the present. Yesterday is over. Tomorrow is not promised. We have 86,400 seconds to spend today. And in the book of Psalms, it says, "Teach us to make the most of our time so that we may grow in wisdom." Is that what you feel about your life at the moment? Are you making the most of your time? Are you growing in wisdom in this area? You see, Oscar Wilde probably had it right when he said that it was a rare thing to actually live life and to live it to the full. So often we exist, we roll from one thing to another, we can be aimless and without purpose, and we feel that we're just on the treadmill of life. But that's not the plan that God has for you and your life. Jesus said that he came that we might have life and have it in its fullness. And Fiona talked about that last week, didn't she? As she thought about trusting an unknown future to a known God. So how do we live life to the full? How do we make the most of our time, our daily 86,400 seconds? Well, I guess there are many, many ways, but I want to suggest 3 to you today. Firstly, is to love in the moment. You see, love is not a feeling, it's an action. It's a decision that we make about how we will treat all the people in our lives, the ones that we like and the ones that we don't. And when we love others on a daily basis, our lives are enriched. Jesus said that we should love one another, and in doing this, that our joy would be full. And there's a connection, isn't there, between loving others and it actually filling our lives with joy. So in my 86,400 seconds of today, will I choose to love my husband Ronnie? Will I listen to him? Will I join him with my binoculars on a bird watch because it's something he loves to do? Will I be kind? Will I gift him my time? Will I help him? In my 86,400 seconds of today, will I love my wider family, my friends, my neighbours, work colleagues? Will I love those connected to Turning Point Church? You see, in those thousands of seconds that I'm given to live each day, a simple telephone call, a handwritten card, a prayer, an encouraging verse sent on WhatsApp, a walk together, a coffee out, can be an expression of love. So what can you do today to express love to those around you? Let's ask ourselves the question, what does love require of me today, in this moment? And if we answer that, I know that it will help us to truly live life if we love others. Now, I don't want to repeat what Fiona said last week, but of course, the most loving relationship that we can ever experience is the love of our Heavenly Father and his Son Jesus, who love us so unconditionally. And as we discover his love and as we accept his forgiveness, he is the giver of so much that helps us to truly live life. He gives us mercy on our shame-filled days. He gives us gratitude for our ungrateful days, forgiveness for our bitter days, peace for our anxious days, hope for our catastrophic days, fuel for our depleted days, faith for our fear-filled days, calling for our purposeless days, and direction for our decision days. He is a God who says every day deserves a chance to live life and not just exist. But he calls us to love him, to love one another, to love those close to us, to love those who are nothing like us, to love the unlovely. We are called to love and to be loving. You know, the second way I think that we can make the most of our time is to do good in the moment. This has been some summer of sport, hasn't it? And I've loved it. There's been Wimbledon, the Euros, and now the Olympics. But if you cast your mind back to that certain football final, you will, and if you know me well, you will know my heartache and disappointment at England's loss in that penalty shootout. But what shocked me more and what upset me more than that losing in the final was seeing the racial abuse that Saka, Sancho and Rashford faced. It was horrendous and horrific, and something has to be done. In fact, something is being done. Not by the government or legislation, but by ordinary, kind-hearted people who have chosen to stand against the abuse and the hate and have chosen to do good. So it all started a few days after that final with a few post-it notes on a wall. Now, it's not any wall. It's a wall in Withington, South Manchester, where street artist Axie has painted a mural of Marcus Rashford to celebrate his amazing work in tackling child food poverty and inequality. The quote on the mural was one given by his mum, and it said, "Take pride in knowing that your struggle will play the biggest role in your purpose." You see, unfortunately, following Rashford's penalty miss on that Sunday final, someone, or some people, decided to go and deface that mural and vandalise it with abusive graffiti. But by the end of Monday, almost the whole mural had been covered with post-it notes of love and support for Marcus and his teammates. There was a tidal wave of love and support, and Axie the artist soon returned to respray the areas that had been graffitied, and he stood in awe as more and more people came to share their support for this young man. There was a growing momentum and desire amongst ordinary everyday folk to stand up against the vandals and the racists. People were lending each other pens and tape and helping to find space to stick their post-it notes. Other people stood and reflected as they read the scores of messages. Even Marcus Rashford posted, "Overwhelmed, thankful, lost for words." And love won. Good overcame evil. Why? Because people chose to do good in that moment. They didn't just sit at home and complain. They made a decision to act, even in a small way, like writing on a post-it note. And that changed the news headlines. You know, someone once said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing." We need to be proactive and speak out wherever we see or hear injustice, prejudice, any kind of abuse or bullying or the mistreatment of the poor. You know, I've been reading recently in the book of James, who was the brother of Jesus, and he talks about the importance of living out our faith with actions, with good works. And Paul wrote that we should overcome evil with good. Doing good in the moment is something God desires for us. He wants us to be difference makers, to bring change for good, to overcome evil with good. Now, Marcus Rashford is a 23-year-old footballer, and he's fighting to overcome the injustice of child food poverty. He's a bit of a hero, he's a role model and an inspiration, and he's overcoming evil with good. And I guess my question today is, what part are we going to play? Will we seek to do good in the moment? From post-it notes on a wall to changing government legislation and everything in between, we can all make a difference for good. So just ask yourself, where is there an injustice that captures your attention and captures your heart? That's often a great starting point. Or look at your own struggles and experiences and see if, out of them, you can make a difference for good in others. How can we as a church stand up for good, speak out where necessary, take action and get involved? So we can love in the moment, we can do good in the moment, and finally and thirdly, we can find joy in the moment, or we can enjoy the moment. You know, it's all too easy to wake up and allow our day to be shaped by the amount of traffic on the road, or the length of the queue at the supermarket, or the short reply from a loved one, or the constant bickering of the children. And it's so tempting to think that we'll enjoy life when the children grow up, or when we get their promotion, or when our finances improve, or when we've lost that weight, or when we retire. And we miss out on the now because we look ahead to a time when we think things will be better. I wonder if we ever allow ourselves a few moments in the day to look out and allow a smile to come across our faces. I smile when I see a raindrop nestled in a leaf almost twinkling in the sunlight, or a rosebud opening, or the smell of a beautiful candle. I smile when I see the sunset across the Findhorn Bay, or when I eat a Biscoff ice cream or sneak a cuddle with my hubby. I feel joy. I enjoy that moment. And sometimes tears will well up in my eyes, not because I'm sad, but because it's beautiful or delightful, and I just know joy. It's easy for us to get sidetracked and focused on the problems and burdens of the day. We all have inconveniences and irritations that we have to face on a regular basis, but we can still find joy in each new day. One of God's gifts to us is that He enables us by His grace to find joy even in the midst of trouble and difficulty, because joy isn't based on having everything our own way all of the time. Joy is deeper than that. And even in the midst of difficult circumstances, it's possible to smile or find joy. You know, during a period of illness, there were a few things that I did just because they brought me joy. I looked back over photographs. I watched the birds feed in our garden. I loved lighting a candle in the evening and enjoying the flickering flame or the fragrance that came from it. I listened to a song called The Goodness of God over and over because it never failed to bring me joy. And in looking for joy, in enjoying the moment, my life changed, my spirit lifted, my perspective was less bleak, my attitude was more positive, and God touched me. So can you make a decision right now to enjoy the moment? You know, if you have a tendency to be too serious, laugh a little. You know, my son James and his wife Rachel were up staying a week or so ago, and he told me a story that just tickled me. And we laughed and laughed, so much so that tears were rolling down my cheeks and my sides were hurting. I just couldn't stop laughing. But boy, did it do me some good. If we had our lives to live over, what would we do differently? I doubt any of us would wish we had worked harder or longer or worried more. I doubt any of us would spend more time in fear or worry or dread or regret. If you're anything like me, you would probably want to spend more time laughing, loving, doing good, enjoying the moment. Well, the good news is we can. We can start today. The missed opportunities of the past are nothing compared to the fresh opportunities of the present. And with God's help, we can begin to maximise each new moment that He gives us. Oscar Wilde thought that to live was the rarest thing in the world. Most people only exist, that is all. But Jesus said that He came to bring life, and life in all its fullness. Remember, we get 86,400 seconds today. How are you going to spend them?